Surprise Tristan Harris video, everybody! You may know of Tristan from the film The Social Dilemma on Netflix.
Persuasive technology is just sort of design intentionally applied to the extreme, where we really want to modify someone's behavior. We want them to take this action.
He's the guy who pulled the Jerry Maguire with the PowerPoint presentation over at Google.
I decided to make a presentation, kind of a call to arms. It basically just said 2 billion people will have thoughts that they didn't intend to have because a designer at Google said this is how notifications work on that screen that you wake up to in the morning.
But I've seen some mixed opinions about whether or not he should be taken seriously. Some people think he's an alarmist, some people think he's a hero. What is Tristan Harris trying to warn us about?
Shortening of attention spans, more addiction, more outrage-driven news media, more polarization, more mental health issues, more social isolation. We have more breakdown of truth. We have more conspiracy-minded thinking.
If you saw The Social Dilemma, then you know that he is the co-founder of the Center for Humane Technology. And for the past decade, he's been trying to help tech companies and regular people understand that all those fun, exciting features on those apps that keep everybody coming back are altering our brains without our informed consent.
These are all connected problems, and we have to see it as a system that we call human downgrading, which is the climate change of culture.
The climate change of culture.
Climate change of culture.
It's because, in a nutshell, social media companies sell their users' attention to advertisers. Therefore, their highest priority is to show their investors how much attention they're getting. And since our brains intuitively redirect our attention to things that make us afraid or angry, businesses are competing literally to be the most enraging and frightening. Even if they don't want to be enraging and frightening, they have to be in order to compete with all the rage and fright. So that changes the intellectual ecosystem and then negatively impacts our worldview and behavior. You can't even really think of it in terms of, is that happening? Because if you look at all the pieces, there's no way it's not happening. No, people's brains aren't affected by the messaging they get. That's stupid. Don't be stupid. In fact, the idea that people could see this story as another sensational doom and gloom, blown out of proportion story is indicative of the problem itself.
The breakdown of our shared reality, the breakdown of truth, and our ability to trust in shared sources of information. The fact that people think of it as some kind of conspiracy theory is itself an enormous problem.
The reason this issue fires me up the way it does is because I spent the majority of my life in what I would call a brainwashed state. My mother forcefully packed my brain with a worldview that was best suited to take care of her infantile emotional needs. Why should I grow up when I can torment my children? So I have gotten a rather uncomfortable up-close personal look at how vulnerable my brain is, despite how intelligent I am. Social media and shitty parents have two very important similarities. Number one, they have a huge sway in influencing your perception of reality, and two, they know your weaknesses.
We're trapped in a mind-body meat suit that has a set of bindings and bendings to how we see the world that you don't know that you're living inside of that corrective tissue that happens to bend attention in that way.
By default, we think of our brains as a neutral observer of objective reality. But that's an illusion. Our reality is being filtered through an imperfect lens that can be warped by people without our best interests at heart.
If I could only get inside that brain of yours and understand what makes you do these crazy, twisted things.
But we're stuck. We are stuck in a holding pattern with this problem because the average person does not truly understand or accept that this is happening.
'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't.
I can't tell you how irritating it is to me when people say, oh, it's not a big deal, or we have bigger problems. This is the first problem, guys. This is the first one. COVID-19, climate change. We cannot deal with any of that if we don't fix this one first.
If social media makes shared understanding and shared truth impossible, you can't solve any problem, whether it's human trafficking or poverty or climate issues or racial injustice, whatever it is that you care about.
And if we can't solve any problems, how are we going to have an organized society? We can't.
People recognize that politics is invented to avoid warfare.
Right.
So we have compromise and understanding so that we don't physically are violent with each other.
Social media is telling us what our reality is. The seriousness of that cannot be overstated, because once our worldview hardens around a perceived reality, we become ego-identified with it.
Identity level propaganda and identity politics, it's the deepest level of psychological influence work.
In other words, a challenge to our worldview is interpreted by our nervous system as an existential threat. This is why you see people all over the internet fighting so passionately about what might seem to outsiders as entirely trivial. So these apps, combined with our egos, create a psychological security breach that anyone can take advantage of. And we just lean back and get programmed.
Are you nervous?
Trying to be, but this thing keeps tamping it down. Yikes! Okay, you got it. Uh-oh, I'm nervous.
And now that COVID-19 has virtually shut down the meat space world, and we have found ourselves relying on this shit more and more, it's plain to see the Emperor is stark ass naked.
Do you presume to criticize the great Oz?
The safety net ain't so safe.
I think coronavirus makes it clear that these things are essentially public utility infrastructure because they're unavoidable. Coronavirus is like a UV light that shows you all the places where, nope, you had inequality over here, and that's exactly where the virus spikes up and spreads again. So I feel like coronavirus is this big mirror that's holding this moment up to us and saying, this is where your society and your system are not working for you.
You see, powerful entities, corporations, governments, religions, sometimes even parents, enslave their people by making them frightened and dependent. Like Immortan Joe and his water supply in Mad Max Fury Road. They just trick you into believing that you're not being subjugated by providing you with a facade of limited, pre-selected options, like a magician.
No. They work for each other in exchange for money, which they then...
Well, that just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
So ponder this for a moment. If you are a foreign power of some sort who might benefit from getting America all riled up, so scared that they turn against one another and turn against their own government, how might you go about doing that?
They're not going to attack the United States with nuclear weapons anymore. They can't do kinetic warfare. If Russia or China try to fly a plane into the United States, our Pentagon and billions of dollars of defense infrastructure will shoot that thing down and it doesn't get in. You would actually want to take the divisions in a country that already exists. You use its own internal tensions against itself. This is what Sun Tzu would tell you to do. Walk over their virtual borders and stir up culture wars and racial divides everywhere, which is exactly what we're seeing them doing. There's such an incentive to try to drive up that conflict, and I think we have to realize how much that may be artificially motivated.
It's awkward for me right now because I'm aware that I'm warning you about internet bullshit whilst inescapably being internet bullshit. This is, after all, a YouTube video. But this is why I'll never have ads, because I want you guys to trust me. No one will ever buy your attention through my content, ever. I won't allow it over my dead body. So it's important to me that you guys know I would not be sharing this shit for views or money or attention, or if I was coerced into doing so in some way. Authenticity is too precious. Why would I give up my own?
We massively underestimate the vulnerability of culture. While we've been so paranoid about our physical borders and building the wall, we left the digital border wide open.
This is not a fear-mongering projection. This is right now.
We don't think of the geopolitical contest between the US and the West and China and Russia as occurring yet. We think we're in some kind of stalemate or a Cold War, but it's not the case at all. We have a massive information war going on.
Geopolitical World War III information warfare.
The World War III sort of digital information warfare
That's happening right now.
It is. I did all the post-production for a show from Larry King's Digital Network or a TV about cybersecurity, or lack thereof. It was called World War E. It was hosted by Mike Rogers, former chair of the House Intelligence Committee. He was in the running to take over as FBI director after James Comey got fired. Foreign actors are using these tools to manipulate us however they see fit. It's a documented fact.
If Russia or China try to fly an information bomb into the country, instead of being met by the Department of Defense, they're met by a Facebook algorithm with a white glove that says exactly which zip code you want. Like, it's the opposite of protection.
I can show you an example really fast. I happened to catch this particular ad organically. It was fed to me by the algorithm. And feel free to verify at your own leisure whatever information sources you trust, but I am telling you that this is bullshit propaganda trying to manipulate the far right.
I just read a report on how the FBI was abusing spying warrants, and it made no sense to me.
Really? You read the entire report? I thought it was so convoluted that I instead read this.
Yeah, don't try to understand genuine sources. Read this bullshit instead. But not just any bullshit, our bullshit.
This explained things in a way that I could actually understand what happened.
Nice. Who put this timeline together?
Good question. It was the Epic Times. They've been covering the story of spying abuse over the last 3 years like nobody else. So click that button below, try the paper, and stay truly informed.
Yeah, that chill running down your spine, telling you there's something wrong with that commercial, it's telling you the truth. The chill is not the commercial.
It's really a global issue and a national security issue that affects everyone.
People tend to think that as long as their data is secure, then they're safe. I don't put anything on Facebook. I'm really careful with blah, 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 blah.
They're not competing for your data. They're competing for attention.
They don't see their exposed psyche as a vulnerability in any way.
What can I do to kind of dangle bananas in front of your monkey brain to get you to come back to these apps? The business model is addiction, what we now call the race to the bottom of the brainstem, the race to the bottom of the brainstem for attention. And so the fear-based part of the brain ends up creating the entire collective consciousness of 3 billion people.
If you have a machine running on auto and all it's looking for is human attention, just as a dry commodity, it's not going to make value judgments about how it's getting that attention. It'll just dose us with fear over and over and over again. It's gross.
If you're driving down the highway, if you look at a car crash, and everybody driving down the highway, they look at the car crash. According to Facebook and Google, it's like the whole world wants car crashes. We just feed them car crashes after car crashes after car crashes. We have totally deregulated the information environment and information ecology where garbage wins, unfortunately.
Here's the thing, though. It is not your fault that fear gets you mixed up and emotional and soft and squishy for suggestion. How do you think my mom controlled me for the first 33 years of my life? Your attention gravitates toward the problem. From an evolutionary perspective, that makes sense. If you're having a drink of water and a lion runs at you, the lion issue should take precedence over the drinking water issue. It's not because we like the lion more. Oh my God.
Our minds literally have something called negativity bias. So if you have 100 comments and 99 are positive and 1 is negative, just where does the average human's mind go?
Right, they go to the negative.
We'll keep our focus on the negative.
But this isn't Facebook's responsibility, right? They're not the content police. People are perfectly capable of deciding for themselves what's fake news. Facebook couldn't possibly choose for them.
There's no such thing as not choosing. You are making a conscious choice when you're not choosing. Be conscious of what that choice is and be aware of what values you want to promote.
To knowingly allow an automated engine to harvest human attention and contaminate our perception of reality with toxic levels of negativity is a choice.
They claim to be neutral. That's just like an ultimate democracy. Whatever people like or click on the most rises to the top through some democratic process.
But it isn't. Most of us, automatically, me included, when we see an algorithm-suggested video, we think of that as a neutral suggestion. It's automatic, it's a computer. In fact, we would be more distrustful if we knew it was a person, right? In this fear-based society, we trust machines more than we trust people, even though 100 movies have told us not to.
Death to humans!
We have completely forgotten what the difference is between a machine and a human being. A machine is heartless.
It's a values-blind system that just cares about what will get attention, while hiding behind the fiction of neutrality.
But hiring people to curate content doesn't only invite bias. It also invites those pesky expenses. People need things.
What is it with you kids? Every other day it's food, food, food.
So if you're an investor and you want a strong return, heartless robots are appealing.
Instead of paying an editor $100,000 a year to figure out which of those things is true that we want to promote and give exponential reach to, you have an algorithm that says, hey, what do people click on the most?
So despite the fact that these algorithms literally provide our culture's entire intellectual diet, there is virtually no human intervention. Great plan, guys.
Does YouTube hire child psychologists in the very basic initial design process? No. Does Netflix design their experience with child psychologists thinking, gosh, what would help kids develop since we're essentially the new digital education infrastructure for the world? No.
But algorithms aren't just a problem because they're heartless. They're heartless and really, 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 really good at their jobs.
It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear.
A computer does have an agenda, my friends, and it's exponentially more efficient at pursuing it. This is why I cringe whenever I hear people say things like,
if you can control yourself, it's not that big a deal. But how many people can control themselves?
I love Joe Rogan, it's not his fault. But the fact that smart and rational people think this way is why awareness is so desperately needed. The assumption that people can control themselves is a really problematic position, so I'm gonna get kind of personal for a second. I spent stretches of my life, years to decades, where I was in constant pain. Emotional pain that became physical pain. Sometimes the stress of it would make me lose consciousness entirely. I was constantly fighting some sort of addiction, and at one point I attempted suicide. Why? Because I couldn't control myself. I couldn't be the person that my abusive mother and all of the cultural messaging told me I was supposed to be. I lived in constant inner resistance and self-hatred. What I didn't know then that I know now is that I was born with neurodivergent brain chemistry and basically had that slapped with abuse for decades. I wasn't failing to control myself. I was failing to conform to cruel and unreasonable standards, to a rigid system that doesn't value my strengths. The people can't control themselves narrative shames people and drives them back to addiction. It turns the inescapable, limited realities of our brains into a moral failing. There's something cruel about telling somebody they need to control themselves when they were set up to fail.
The technology knows something about you that you may not know about yourself. It's acting based on that. When you're a kid, your mother might know something about your needs better than you might know about yourself. But the mother knowing that thing about you is not trying to manipulate you into profit maximization for her benefit, right?
Tristan has clearly never met my mother. She has literally 1099'd me.
When you're sitting there and you think, okay, I'm going to look at this one thing on Facebook because my friend invited me to this event, or it's this one post I have to look at. And next thing you know, you find yourself scrolling through the thing for like an hour and you say, man, that was on me. I should have had more self-control. But behind the screen, behind that glass slab, is like a supercomputer pointed at your brain that is predicting the perfect thing to show you. Next.
Asymmetry of power is actually a very generous way for Tristan to describe this. He is a privileged white male. He's choosing his words carefully. We're talking about rape. The global rape of human autonomy. Fight me.
When technology crosses the line of human strengths, that's when we think the singularity happens, that's when it takes our jobs. We miss this much earlier point when technology, like a magician, doesn't have to be smarter than you, it just has to know or overwhelm your weaknesses.
Overwhelm your weaknesses. You know, like rape. This asymmetry of power is a violation of our free thought. It is a Borg assimilation built for fiscal efficiency at the expense of our souls.
The asymmetry of influence and the infinite feeds of the outrage are more powerful than my sort of daily mindfulness practice. And we shouldn't put that burden on individual minds anyway to have to develop the superstructure or metacognitive perch upon which to not be so hijacked.
In other words, victim blaming is so not 2021. But why would they let you blame them for knowingly fear-milking your eyeballs when it's so much easier to convince you to blame yourself?
If you can control yourself, it's not that big a deal.
Sorry, Joe, I love you, but I'm really hoping that soundbite doesn't age well. It's like they show you 500 ads for alcohol and then they shun you from society for being an alcoholic. There's like 90% corn, sugar, and fat in every grocery store, but it's our fault for being obese. It is your fault that you are being influenced by everything trying like hell to influence you. It really should make you mad. It makes me mad. And come to think of it, stripping our individual rights in favor of protecting an economic model, what else does that sound like?
Slavery in the 1800s. There was a point at which slavery was propping up the entire world economy.
So yeah, we're being enslaved and skull-fucked by our phones. But I don't want to frame Tristan's position inaccurately. I know there's lots of editing in this, but I didn't cut anything where I felt like I was significantly changing the meaning.
I'm not equating advertising or programming human beings to slavery. I'm not.
I am. It's me doing that. Well, I guess I'm not equating, but I'm definitely comparing. I'm just not going to mince words when it comes to the seriousness of this. I would consider this invisible violence against us. Not for a nefarious purpose, just pure egoic ignorance, just carelessness. And we don't have to allow this to happen to us. We don't. We just have to admit that it's happening. We are not moved to change those things whose reality we deny. Time to face the monster under the bed.
I think so much of the work that we've done over the last few years has been to first get people and the public to see that they can be influenced. Because I think people view that as an indictment against their sovereign agency. If you tell people something is bad for you, that is not an effective way to get them to change their behavior. People actually get more defensive. They get something called reactance. They don't want to accept that message.
And this is the egoic ignorance. This, in my opinion, is the core problem. So while Tristan is out there fighting the good fight, trying to get this business model turned around, which is also very much needed, my personal area of interest is encouraging people to recognize that our brain isn't us. It is a tool we are using. It is an interface with reality. The brain tells us what's going on and is an unreliable narrator. If I had stayed ego-identified with my brain throughout abuse, addiction, just the awesome ride that I've enjoyed so far, I probably wouldn't have stopped trying to kill myself. Or I would have just lived out my years as a soulless, obedient zombie like so many people across the world do, blaming myself for not being able to control myself. But no, once that light went on, it'll never go off again. I am not gonna judge myself because of the imperfections of my brain.
One thing that's universal about human nature is that no one wants to feel manipulated. Everyone wants to know or feel that their choices are genuinely free.
The fact that these computers are hacking our brains, and we aren't wise to that, like we somehow are letting that happen, that strikes people as insulting. But that arrogance and ignorance is being weaponized against us. It's stupid. We're so afraid of not having agency, we don't look at the evidence that we've already lost it.
Everything in a democracy depends on individual sense-making and meaningful choice, free will, independent views. But if that's all basically sold to the highest bidder that debases the soil from which independent views grow, because all of us are jacked into this sort of matrix of social media manipulation, that's ruining and degrading our democracy.
In other words, a fish is free to swim wherever it wants in the fishbowl.
You can make any choice you want, but you don't see the invisible constraints on how you are seeing the world.
It just shouldn't be that insulting to people. The ideas in your head were put there by someone. I mean, that should be just common sense. Creativity, human ingenuity, is still a remix of whatever content was in the brain before. Things that have been put in your head. I hope I get people to understand this before I die.
Oh my, Your Highness, Jafar's been controlling you with this. What?
Okay, let's go back to that fishbowl. Imagine if some dude walked up to that fishbowl and was like, hey, you know there's an entire ocean out here, right? And the fish goes, fuck you, buddy, you think I can't tell the difference between a fishbowl and the ocean? I'm some dude, all the time.
If I say you're being manipulated, everyone says, that's not me. Maybe those other people over there, they got influenced by that Russia stuff.
Why do you think that you are the only person exempt from all of these tricks of psychology that work on every human being?
But no, certainly not you or me. We're the smart ones. It's just those gullible people over there.
Here's a quick exercise for you. Go through the news stories on your feed. Every time you see a negative story, or a story that conjures up negative emotions, ask yourself, what can I do about this? Not some like distant, abstract, like, we'll vote on something or I'll donate money somewhere. I mean, do you have any influence over the outcome of the story in any way? If the answer is no, that's not very valuable information for you. It's just a dose of fear and learned helplessness, making you and everybody else depressed.
We need to change what we're competing for.
We have to end attention and surveillance capitalism.
Don't get me wrong, at my heart, I am a free market person.
And I'm not like a socialist.
But this dogmatic veneration of capitalism is starting to kind of be like following your GPS right off a cliff. I mean, how much evidence could we possibly need that what's good for stock prices isn't always good for people?
If you ran the National Football League and your scientist came to you and said, gosh, I know we've been doing this sport for 50 years, but we just did a brain scan and we found out that all of the NFL players essentially have massive brain damage that's causing suicides. And our business model is to sell concussions on TV. That's an unaffordable truth. You can't accept that truth. Just like if you run Exxon, you can't afford the truth that your entire business model is to drive a civilizational extinction. We gotta celebrate and thank fossil fuels for building the economic prosperity that they gave us. And now we need to get the hell off of them and move to a regenerative.
Did I not just say that in the Texas Blackouts video? Did I not?
I did.
In the film, Justin Rosenstein says, is so long as a whale is worth more dead than alive, and a tree is worth more as lumber than as a tree. Now we're the whale, we're the tree. It's going to be more profitable for a person to be addicted, outraged, polarized, and disinformed than if they're just a human being or a citizen. The problem is essentially runaway extractive capitalism. Now that's not saying let's dismantle all of capitalism, that's just saying where is the boundary, making sure we have a sustainable, non-self-terminating civilization.
You know, just a sustainable, non-self-terminating civilization. Is that so much to ask? Something else that I said in the Texas Blackout video is if an organization is causing a problem, then those obedient to that organization, dependent on it, where they get their paycheck, then the best workers with the very best intentions, who are great at their jobs, will make the problem worse.
I think Nicholas Nassim Taleb wrote the line that the three most addictive things in the world are cocaine, heroin, and a monthly paycheck.
We have built society's engine. As such, we're the best and brightest among us. Co-create our doom, unless the people up top start making decisions that value humanity over the almighty dollar. But these people, these workers, they don't want to downgrade humanity. They want to feed their families, pay their mortgages.
The yuppie Nuremberg defense.
There's a famous saying by Upton Sinclair that you cannot get someone to see something that their salary depends on them not seeing.
We can't ask them to put their moral convictions ahead of their direct personal needs.
So long as the business models of these companies depend on extracting attention, can you expect them to do something different?
They might even care deeply about the issue, but the pressure on them to compete in the attention economy hits way closer to home. And I've been there. I've had a job harvesting attention before. We were soulless. We had no shame about what we were doing whatsoever. As long as we were legally allowed, that was the only limit.
For someone operating in today's attention economy, it's a multipolar trap. If I don't buy all the Facebook ads that my competitors are willing to do the less ethical thing and lie about their product and micro-target, they'll just kill me eventually. We have to use the addiction, the shiny, blingy red dots versus the white dots. We have to have the auto-playing videos instead of waiting for you to hit play. Ethics is by definition a constraint. I'm tying my hands behind my back every single time I impose an ethical value. The least ethical actor wins.
If society runs on an engine that actively discourages moral behavior, that's not a good system. That alone should necessitate changing it.
No one wants to tell their children, you know what I did with my life is I accidentally ruined democracy and made people lonely and distracted. No one wants that. So we're all on the same side of the table. Let's move the business model.
Now let's get to the true insult of what these people are commodifying. When they hijack our attention and harvest our time, they aren't just altering our worldview, they're stealing our lives.
It tends to be one of those points that sounds more fluffy. It sounds just like woo woo, blah, blah, attention is sacred. You don't really realize, I think, until you've seen the degree to which our minds are hijacked. We have an infinite growth economic paradigm of big technology companies based on a finite substrate of human attention.
Your attention is your human experience, which we all know has a time limit. So by manipulating you for your attention instead of asking for your money, you are paying with the most precious of currencies. The one you can never get back. If the algorithm favors stupid shit, then once that stupid shit hits capacity, there's no room for smart shit.
We're actually far over our finite carrying capacity.
We are on a runaway train headed straight for idiocracy.
Joe stated his case logically and passionately, but his perceived effeminate voice only drew big gales of stupid laughter.
Notice I haven't even brought up freedom of speech yet, because can you see by this point how freedom of speech, it's not that it's not important, it just becomes a moot point.
It's important to realize that free speech absolutism was valued philosophically by the founding fathers at a time when we had an abundance of attention. But we never thought about, is there a finite number of ears to hear everything? Or do we have a vast overabundance of information and speech compared to the finite number of ears that we have to hear?
This automated junk engine will keep cranking this bullshit out there until a billion fragmented, conflicting realities is all the world knows. The ideas that aren't shocking and polarizing won't get any exposure and will eventually die off, while all the junk recycles forever.
We have a system right now with social media that broadly narrows the space of human sense-making and choice by reinforcing the old biases,
leading to an intellectual dark age that I imagine would look something like Mad Max Fury Road meets WALL-E.
You haven't moved since I left to scavenge this morning.
If we really need to make new choices and put new choices on life's menu, we need to be able to have a basis of attention, a basis of consciousness that allows us to do something different or new, to think something new that we weren't thinking before.
So it's impossible to argue that attention is unlimited, yes? It's impossible to argue that attention isn't important, right? Limited, important. Maybe it's time to start talking about protecting it. Let's protect the content of our lives from being hijacked by polarizing and unpleasant experiences. Let's just make life not horrible. So that's what Tristan's trying to do, and I commend him for that. So now that we have covered the problem, let's talk about Tristan the person. In this attention economy, with so much incentive to manipulate and scare people, it does raise the question, why should we trust this fucking guy? There is a clear through line of integrity and character, and I think that people should take that into account when they hear what he has to say. My voice is starting to get all cracky, but we've made it this far, I'm gonna go the distance. So he grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area with a single mother.
Grew up in San Francisco and went to a small school for working parents. I grew up just with my mother, not with father, and then we went and moved up to Santa Rosa to the countryside to live out her dream of owning horses.
If you saw The Social Dilemma, then you know that as a kid he was a magician. He was always aware of the fact that everyone, no matter how smart they are, was susceptible to certain mind tricks.
So I had this lifelong fascination with how the human mind is influenced by things that it doesn't see, that are not immediately apparent. No matter how brilliant you are, how many layers of PhDs you have, it doesn't change the fact that the underlying psychological weaknesses or biases or limits of the mind are the same for everyone.
The same for everyone. So don't be so insulted. So he studied at the Persuasive Technology Lab at Stanford alongside Mike Krieger, who would later found Instagram. But it wasn't like this nefarious thing. They all had good intentions.
Mike Krieger and I, the founder of Instagram, worked together on a little project called Send the Sunshine. It was actually about noticing that people have seasonal affective depression disorder. My zip code had bad weather for 5 days in a row, and your zip code didn't. And so what if it texted you and said, hey, your friend Tristan has had bad weather. Do you want to send him a photo of the sunshine to cheer him up and let him know you're thinking about you?
So then he starts a company.
I got very interested in entrepreneurship, and I started a small company called Apture, which was about helping people learn things on the internet. We called it Lighter Fluid for Sparks of Curiosity. And we thought, what if we could apply all that stuff I learned at the Persuasive Technology Lab for good? I know what good is because I'm a 23-year-old, smart kid from Stanford. Thought, what could go wrong? We have pure good intentions. We're just trying to help people learn things. We're persuading them to learn. But at the end of the day, everything that my company did was not actually about helping people learn. What it really mattered was whether or not we could tell the economists that we were increasing how much time people were spending on its website.
Thus, Tristan's fragmentation was born.
And I honestly, as the founder of the company, couldn't admit that there was a gap between my positive intentions as a human being waking up wanting to do this good and the ultimate thing that we were measured by, which was to capture human attention.
He was tearing himself in half because he was not in alignment with his inner truth.
I tried to pretend for a long time, but it's easy to fool yourself into thinking that they're the same thing.
So Tristan had a love versus fear choice to make. The loving choice, which always makes you more vulnerable, or the fear-based choice, which might keep you safe, but it also keeps you stagnant within a very lackluster human experience. Similar in my head when I was trying to justify living with my mother. She's happy, there's peace, everything's fine. I really, really wanted to believe that I could just stay there and save my money. Because you're looking at the consequences of seeing the truth. Like when you see the reality of what's actually happening, and you're not trying to sort of maneuver out of it. Once you admit that that thing is true, there's no turning back after that.
I saw how more and more of my really well-intentioned friends got trapped in this viral growth, get maximum engagement, maximum time spent. It was through a set of other tech founders and I gathering for something that I decided to basically cave in and just let Google acquire the company for parts.
They kind of glossed over this in The Social Dilemma. He started a company, got acquired by Google, he became the design ethicist, but they didn't explain the nature of that acquisition and what point that was in his life.
Several of us ended up letting our companies become talent acquired. And what I mean by that really is acquired for parts. I mean, this was not a successful acquisition. It was really one of the most stressful and depressing periods of my life, to be honest, because you have to admit that you've been working for 6 years incredibly hard and we got eaten up by the Borg. I mean, our entire service and all the publishers and all the code and all the data and everything we had done became ash.
So this put Tristan in Google, the almighty Google, on the team for Gmail, one of the most pervasive technology products in the world. All of us have sacrificed some of our lives to the Gmail window.
I was thinking about, is Gmail really good for people? Could we start to implement features that would reduce the addictiveness? There I am in the room where it happened. And I thought if there was any room where people would care about this would be the one. To no disparagement of my colleagues, I just didn't find the conversation as thoughtful as it needed to be, given the consequences that we were having.
So I'm going to translate. The rest of the Gmail team was not on his level. So that's when he made the famous presentation.
That was about how technology was holding the human collective psyche in its hands. Never before in history have essentially 50 designers, a handful of technology designers, mostly male, mostly men, mostly white. 50 white guys in California between 25, 35 years old. At three tech companies determined what 2 billion people's attention is going to be on a daily basis, that we were really controlling the world's psychology. And we have a moral responsibility.
We have an enormous responsibility
in how we're shaping kind of the collective pool of attention.
I actually have family in this industry, and I'm pretty sure I remember hearing about this presentation when it happened. And I'm pretty sure my family members in question were laughing at him about it, because they're horrible people. Like, the movie and everything has made him look all super cool, but you gotta think about, like, throughout these years that he's been going through all of this, he's gotta be driving people crazy, right? On this moral crusade, trying to get in the way of all the money they're making things more difficult.
I actually had no idea how people were going to respond. I was actually really afraid to send it out. I was prepared that if I had gotten fired for some reason because of it, that I would be okay with that. So I had pre-committed that was an okay outcome for me.
So Google's response to the buzz around the presentation was giving him the design ethicist position.
Google was generous in, I think, creating a space for me to do some of that research where I became a design ethicist, thinking about how do you ethically steer and design people's attention when you're playing with some very deep-seated psychological vulnerabilities.
So you mean they didn't exactly hire you to be a design ethicist?
That's right.
I think Google gave him a patronizing little sandbox so that he wouldn't contaminate the Gmail team with all of his crazy humane ideas. Then again, maybe I'm just really negative.
I tried changing various things within Google. We tried talking to the Android team and changing things on Chrome and how would we make smartphones work differently, and talk to the App Store teams about changing incentives, but I couldn't get anywhere. And so about 3 years later, I decided to leave.
So he risks his job at Google with the presentation, gets a little spark of hope when they give him his little humane play area. Of course, it goes nowhere because they probably never had any intention of it going anywhere. And 3 years later, he leaves. He quits. He quits Google and goes off to, he has no idea.
I did not at all feel clear. Leave and go do what? Like, how you're inside of the biggest, most influential company in the world.
I mean, is it sad that I find this so amazing? Spent most of my adult career in Los Angeles. I'm not used to people having integrity.
99% of people would have been like, just stay there forever, do your thing, because you're in like corporate womb. People respect you. It feels like a big decision to be like, this is not working.
Thank you, Andrew Yang. That's what I'm saying. Had a very similar feeling when I walked out of my mother's house the last time. I had no idea where I was going or what I was gonna do, but I knew what I was running away from, and I had faith that whatever was in front of me was gonna be better. I used to think that faith was the glorified, willful negation of reason, but now I know it's necessary, because making love decisions makes you vulnerable, so if you don't have any faith, then you'll never make those decisions. It has taken a huge leap of faith for Tristan. Honestly, I can't even think of what to say to segue to the clip I'm about to play now.
Chris Anderson, who runs TED, emailed me only 3 days before the TED conference and said, I need to get you to come to TED to do a TED Talk on what you just shared on Sam's podcast. And I was actually about to fly to Czech Republic with my mother, who was dying at the time, and this was the last time that we were going to take a trip abroad. And I decided to go, but then cut my trip short, go to TED, had 2 days to prepare this first TED Talk on how technology controls a billion minds.
Tristan gave up precious final moments with his dying mother to save your soul. It was his first TED Talk on the subject. It was a huge opportunity. He was thinking about the future of technology, not just his own family. I mean, the reason I really wanted to share all this stuff with you guys is you can't see him as a fearmonger, can you? After seeing all of that? You can't see him as a sensationalist. If he wasn't this sure, why would he do all of that? And we're not even done.
In Congress, we're seeing more hearings.
What was the basis of that case?
You know, to be honest, I was actually in the middle of the Social Dilemma launch when I think that happened, and my home burned down in the recent fires in Santa Rosa, so I actually missed that happening.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, sorry, that was a big thing to drop. But yeah, no, it's awful.
And of course I have to talk about the stuff that he has said that relates to the spiritual stuff that I talk about on this channel. But at the same time, I don't want to out him, because it's clear that he really wants to keep that stuff on the DL. And honestly, perfect example of why I want to translate spirituality for rational minds. So Tristan doesn't have to do this awkward backpedaling dance every time a spiritual concept comes up.
If you want to even get kind of weirdly, I don't know, spiritual or something about it, this sounds like a New Age thing, but one of my favorite teachers is sort of a semi-New Age spiritual teacher.
I get why he's doing that. He doesn't want people to see him as woo and unscientific. But protecting the sanctity of our consciousness is a spiritual issue, and he definitely gets that.
We're talking about human consciousness at the end of the day here, and free will. I think any place where we're being hijacked and don't know it and don't see it or don't name it or witness it is a place where we've lost choice.
He thinks that because it's the only logical conclusion. You don't have to believe anything metaphysical or unscientific for this concept to be relevant or important to you. This is about you not being your brain. That doesn't necessarily imply that you is a spirit or a ghost, just something else. And when you recognize that you are something else, you can observe your brain from a third-party perspective.
We are the only species that could even know that we're doing this to ourselves. We're the only species with the capacity for self-awareness, to know that we have roped ourselves into this matrix of undermining our own psychological weaknesses.
And when you learn to observe yourself from that perspective, it is very empowering.
We can name negativity bias, and once we're aware of it, we get some agency back. We can name that my brain is more likely to feel good getting information that I already agree with than information that disagrees with me. Once I know that about myself, I can get more agency back.
Yeah, instead of being insulted by the concept, we should be amazed that we're even able to conceive that. And I'm sure a lot of people are not going to want to hear this, but somebody who's really good at writing about this concept is Eckhart Tolle. Something he says all the time, watch the thinker. These companies are manipulating and reprogramming the thinker, not you. You are the one watching. But if they continue as they are, they will damn the real you, the watcher, to an empty, totally unfulfilling human experience. And the world will miss out on the mark you could have left.
The way that these platforms harvest attention is almost turning alive humanness and alive human choice into like the dead lumber, these dead slabs of consciousness in which your behavior is more or less predictable, into sort of passivity, addiction, loneliness, because we've taken what could be a free choice and turned it into an unconscious habit.
And this is exactly what Eckhart Tolle is talking about when he talks about unconscious. It's when you're mindlessly following the commands of the brain. In this case, the commands of the brain that were programmed by algorithms. If you are ego-identified with your brain while it is in this state, then you think you're running the show, even though it's entirely mindless.
We're kind of creatures of habit. And so, especially when we're inside of embedded environments that we've been in for long periods of time, we tend to play out the same patterns over and over again. This is where the kind of a new age throwaway statement and also a real one, which is wherever you go, there you are.
Tristan's flirtation with spirituality and new age concepts should not negatively impact anyone's trust in him. He's not one of those crusader types that attaches themselves to a cause and gets ego-identified with it for attention. When this problem is solved, he's not going to look for another problem. He's going to make sunshine apps.
I've never been in my life a person who went against the grain, who was highly disagreeable, who was trying to challenge things. I wasn't outspoken. It just struck me that no one was sufficiently paying attention to this.
Do you feel this massive obligation to be that guy that is out there sort of as the Paul Revere of the technology influence invasion?
I just see these problems and I want them to go away.
Yeah.
I definitely have an agenda to fight this problem, but that's because I want to live in a world where we don't have this problem. That's the goal. Just want my autonomy. I just got it. I don't want to lose it again. At the end of all of my videos, after the Bill Hicks clip, what do I always say? Be careful how you're being used. We're all just caught in so many networks of dependencies, and if we don't start really looking at how we're connected to everything else and the things that are impacting us and the things that we are impacting, not gonna get a grip on this shit.
I'm begging you, dudes, stop this madness!
And I'm really tired. So that's it. Thank you very much. Subscribe and like and follow and support the Center for Humane Technology.
It's just a ride, and we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace. Thank you very much.